Hey, stolen cousins. You already know what time it is. Da-na-na-na-na. Animated horror stories. Da-na-na-na. Animated horror stories. Mhm. I'll just eat something spicy. Um, you already know what time it is. Animated horror stories with your favorite cousin. Yes, yes, I love you guys. Yes. Four true Craigslist horror stories. By who? Our homies, SSG Animation. You already know they don't come to play. Like I always say, feel free to go. Yeah, feel free to go jump over there. You know, if you want to watch what they're posting on a daily, feel free to go jump over there. Cause me, I see a video from a year ago. We're watching it. But other than that, you're my cousin, so you don't mind it. You just enjoy watching it with me, right? Yeah, I love watching it with you too. Let's get into it. What are they doing at Craigslist? They're always doing something at Craigslist. Why would you meet someone? Why would you go to someone's house? You know, meet them at a park. Craigslist is just creepy. Why Craig got a list? Craig got fired on his day off, right? You can't even trust his list. Okay? Okay, yeah, let's get up into it. If you see me look off, it's because I am looking to see if anybody is chatting with me on stream. I'm doing this live on Twitch. Low key because I couldn't figure out the way to do it live on YouTube. But that's neither here or there. We'll figure it out on all platforms. You will see this face and be able to chat with your cousin live. If you want to chat with me on Twitch, go to Elephant Chatting. Let's go. Grab your blunts, your blankets. It's getting warmer. It's getting warmer, but we're watching stuff, so you still need to snuggle in. Blunts, your blankets, bottles of water, uh-huh, and your bags of chips. Yeah, yeah. Let's go. This guy, look at this dude. Like, get out my face. Out of my face.
Hey guys, my name is Ash. Have you ever bought anything on Craigslist? For people who don't like to leave their house, like me, it's a great option to be able to buy anything you want. I started as a simple, compulsive shopper. Everything I liked, I bought, without thinking about it until one day I thought, why can't I also start selling? And
Mm.
that's how I started my career, as an apparel seller on Craigslist. At first, I thought I couldn't sell anything, that since I had no reputation, everyone would ignore me. But the opposite happened. People went crazy. Everyone was buying from me, and my online store was a huge success. Sales came and went. I can't say that all the customers were excellent. I have even argued with some. What I could never expect is that one was going to ruin my life. Everything started as normal. I got an order for a pair of women's long pants, so I packed it up and sent it off. A few days later, Craigslist notified me that the buyer had requested a refund. I wasn't that surprised. It must have been a gift or not the right size. What surprised me was that the buyer didn't tell me anything. When the pants arrived, I almost didn't have time to check them. I just left them on a chair and continued working. Little did I know that the moment I received the pants, my life would change. A few days after the return, I began to see a strange man harassing me. He never came close, but I could
Oh.
see him everywhere, in the distance, just watching
I
me.
just did a video on that ice
The
cream man.
only
That ice
times
cream's
he
no
didn't
good. He
appear
needs to be out of
was when
business.
Derek,
They
my
looking for
boyfriend,
him.
was with me. Little by little, the stalker became more and more encouraged to come closer to my house. He would watch me through the window of his car when I was shopping. It was
Mm-mm.
getting out of control. Whenever I called the police, they could never catch him. But the one time they found him, they did nothing. Why would they arrest him for being in his car? One night, I started receiving several messages on my cell phone.
This
It
ain't
was
our
an
good
unknown
sis.
number. I opened it out of curiosity, and when I saw the video they sent me, I cried with terror. Someone was filming me while I was sleeping. The filming was coming from a place on a chair. No one was holding the camera. It was in a fixed place. I started to check the chair, and that's when it hit me. The pants. I looked at the pants and discovered a small camera in them. Had this been done by the one who gave it back to me?
That's so damn
Was he the one who was
sick.
harassing me? I started crying, and not only destroyed the camera, I threw the pants away. The next few days were terrifying. It was as if the stalker had woken up. I felt like I was never alone, and possibly I wasn't. I saw the man in every step I took. He was always walking down my sidewalk. I heard tapping on my windows and noises everywhere. I couldn't stand the fear anymore, and after the police did nothing again, I called Derek and asked him to stay with me. Even though he had to miss work, I felt much calmer. I had talked to him about going to his house, but that would have to wait until the next day. Once my boyfriend arrived, I thought the stalker would never show up again. I was wrong. The man knocked on my bedroom window, greeting us
you
with a
bold.
creepy smile from outside. In response, my boyfriend grabbed a huge knife. Derek, no! He's dangerous!
Derek,
I
yes.
have to get him now while I can. Otherwise, this will go on forever.
My boyfriend opened the door and began to chase him. I could see through the window how
Do they have a
Derek was
gun?
running fiercely. Surely he had seen him and wanted to catch him. I stayed calm and sighed, but
Did you call the
suddenly
cops?
I received another message. In the video, someone was filming me and Derek from inside the house. At that exact moment, my boyfriend went to chase the man.
Oh,
What?
so that's not him.
No. This can't be.
Oh, it's a
The
setup.
psycho was inside the house. Derek was chasing the wrong person. I ran to my bedroom door and locked it. I put a piece of furniture in front of it to cover it. No one was going to come into this room.
Girl, he's
When
up in
Derek
there.
came over, I would warn him through the window not to come in. I called the police, and they told me they would come immediately. I was afraid that the psycho was listening in from the other phone line, so in desperation, I cut the call. My house was silent. I could no longer hear the invader or anyone else. I approached the door to look through the hole to see if anyone was around. I peeked out slowly and saw no one.
Because he's up in the room with you.
Suddenly, the closet door
Oh,
opened.
what I just say.
At the noise, I fell down in terror. The man was not outside,
In the
nor
room
was he
with
prowling
you.
around my house. He was in my own closet. The man was huge. I had no idea how he fit in the closet. He started walking towards me slowly, with a look and a grin from ear to ear.
How about the
He
window?
looked like a monster.
Ash. I waited so long to have you here with me.
Jump out the window.
It was so much fun torturing you these days, but I couldn't wait another
Jump
minute.
out the
What do
window.
you want? Who the hell are you?
I'm just another Craigslist customer, Ash. I'm sorry I had to return your pants, but I needed to know where you lived.
That's so
Did you
damn
plan
crazy.
all this?
Yes.
You're a psycho.
I may be a psycho, but you're the victim. And you know what? You're not the first.
Without another word, the man lunged at me and began to choke me. I couldn't do anything. He had much more strength than me. He planned everything to perfection, and it worked.
Ash! Ash!
Dizzy, I heard my boyfriend behind the door ramming it. The psycho threw me against the wall, and when I regained consciousness, I didn't see him anymore. Derek, get out of here! Someone's in here! The door burst open with one last slam, and my boyfriend came in desperate.
Ash! Are you all right? Where is he?
Behind
Out
you.
of the shadows, the psycho appeared behind Derek. Derek, behind you! As soon as my boyfriend
Stab him,
turned
Derek!
around, the psychopath plunged a knife into his throat.
Oh, had a knife too.
No! Derek walked towards me, looking at me confused, and immediately fell to the ground.
Oh,
To tell you the truth, I didn't expect to kill him. I thought I was going to be done with you before Derek finished chasing that homeless guy I paid to stalk you. Oh well, so much the better. Where were we, Ash?
The police will be here any minute. They'll lock you up forever.
You're so innocent, Ash. Unfortunately for you, you won't be alive to know if the police will catch me.
The psychopath lunged at me again, and once more he choked me. But this time, I was prepared. In all the commotion, I grabbed a marble ornament that was next to me and smashed it over his head.
okay.
I ran as fast as I could. The psycho, with blood on his head and very dizzy, chased me from behind until just as I was at the exit. He jumped on top of me and caught me. The man had in his hands the same statue I hit him with.
Damn, why
He
didn't you
raised
hold
it
on to it?
towards me to kill me with it. But suddenly, many hands slapped him.
Oh,
They
good
were my
shit. Neighbors?
Who had heard
Love
everything
some
and
good
managed to
neighbors.
stop him until a few seconds later the police arrived. It was all over. Derek did not survive what happened, and from that day
Poor
on,
Derek.
I started therapy and never sold or bought anything on Craigslist again. The man was arrested and received a life sentence. I still remember his face when he was sentenced. He looked at me laughing. He knew the damage was done and that I could never recover. But that's where he was wrong. That night made me stronger.
Good shit.
Now I have learned to defend myself, and even though I am no longer on that platform, I will always be careful. I will never again allow anyone to hurt me or the people I love.
Good.
This is the story of George Francis. George was a college graduate with a degree in social science. But due to his poor grades, he couldn't secure a good job after his graduation. So he decided to continue his job as a McDonald's employee. But living in New York was not easy. Flipping burgers didn't pay his rent, let alone cover his living expenses. And he also had student debt to pay. George's life wasn't looking good at the age of 23. His parents didn't support him in any way, and neither did he have any siblings or friends to rely on. His rent, bills, and the low-paying job was forcing him to sleep hungry most nights. That's when he decided to take up odd part-time jobs to support his life. The best place to look for any such odd jobs was to keep an eye out for any help-needed flyers on shop fronts or on Craigslist. At first, he was able to secure small jobs like dog walking and helping on small-scale construction sites, but none of these jobs paid anything more than a few bucks. These jobs covered his one-time grocery bill or his electricity bill for a month, but nothing beyond that. Plus, doing these jobs was taking a toll on George, as he was always tired and sleepy due to stress. That's when he spotted the most lucrative-looking job post on Craigslist. Although by now he had seen his fair share of weird Craigslist job posts, some of which were so high-paying that they could probably pay his yearly rent. But those job posts required George to do things he wasn't ready to do, like pose naked for portraits or some shit like that.
That's crazy.
This post, however, was different. It wasn't anything weird, scary, or dirty. It was a one-time job but paid way more than anything he was expecting. The job was paying him $5,000 to do a simple task. At first, like any normal, sensible person, George was skeptical about the job offer. He thought, who would offer so much money for such a simple task? There must definitely be a catch. But his rent was due, and he really wanted to eat a proper meal instead of the shitty ramen noodles he was dining on for the past week.
Boy.
So
hush
he
up.
decided to contact the email address. As requested in the post, he stated his name, where he lived, his contact number, his age, gender, what he did for a living,
Why would
and
you give all that
why he wants to
information?
take up this job. He wasn't expecting a reply from the employer, but he still wanted to give it a shot. A part of him even thought this was a prank post and someone was pranking people by posting this job. Nevertheless, he sent the email and went about his day. Several days passed and George had forgotten about the job post, mostly because he didn't expect any positive response to begin with. As he was flipping burgers at about 6 in the evening, his cell phone chimed, indicating an incoming text, message, or email. He completed the order that he was cooking and then took a break for a few minutes. He went out the back door, leaned against the dirty wall, and grabbed his phone out of his pants pocket. He scrolled on it with one hand and lit a cigarette with the other.
Uh-huh.
The constant work and little sleep had made him addicted to smoking. As he inhaled the
That's not how
smoke, his
smoke
eyes
works.
landed on the new email he had received mere minutes ago. This was the reply to the email he had sent several days ago. The email was short, but it had George on his toes in minutes. It said that George was selected for the job because his reasons seemed the most valid. He deserved the job the most. All he had to do was carry a flashlight. It could be a cell phone light or an external battery-powered light, and go to the given address by 11 p.m. that night. George was so excited that he didn't even think clearly for a minute. He had no family that would care for him and hardly any
what?
friends who were interested in his well-being. All George could think of were ways
Job
in
is
which
to
he could
go to
spend the
this address with a
$5,000 that he would
flashlight.
win. He didn't complete his shift at McDonald's that day. Instead, he went home early and decided to make a list of things that he would need with the money he would earn. He grabbed a paper and pen and sat on his couch. The first thing on the list was rent. Next came the grocery, and he also wanted to spend some money on a fancy meal in his favorite restaurant. Next, he would pay his phone bill and save some for the next month's electricity bill. The leftover money would be split into 2 sections. One would go into a savings account, and the rest to pay his student loan debt. As the clock touched 9 p.m., he decided to have a sandwich for dinner and left his apartment to walk to the given address, as he didn't own a car. As soon as he reached the place, he noticed that this wasn't the sort of place he expected to arrive at. He double-checked the address, which confirmed he was in the correct place.
Can we see?
He'd expected to see a high-rising residential or commercial building full of apartments or offices. Instead, he stood before a 45-floor building which was still under construction. There was no security team around, and nor could he spot the person who had contacted him. He just looked up at the building for a few minutes when his phone chimed again, indicating another email from his recruiter. The email said that the money will be transferred to his account through his Cash App after he completes the job. The email also mentioned that the employer would know if he completes the job or not, and his payment would depend on that. George had seen a lot in his short life of 23 years, so he decided to do the job despite being a little scared at first.
Like,
As he walked closer to the building, he soon realized that although the building had an elevator, it wasn't working, as the building didn't have electricity. All George had to do for $5,000 was go to the 45th floor of this building, stand in one of the windows, and flash his flashlight 5 times to indicate that he was there.
are they
He
gonna
started hiking
kill
up
you?
the stairs. The first few floors he could manage easily, but as he crossed the 7th floor mark, he began to grow tired. He had climbed 7 floors nonstop. So he decided to take 1 floor at a time, and he went up 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th floors. By the 25th floor, he was stripped of all energy. As he climbed each floor, he looked at the metal plate indicating the floor's number. But every time he thought he couldn't make it, the thought of $5,000 brought newfound energy to him. He finally made it to the 40th floor and thought that he was in the last trimester of his challenge. He rested on the 40th floor a bit and enjoyed the view of the New York skyline for a while. Then he got back to ascending the stairs. As he passed the 43rd floor, he soon found himself on the 44th floor. He smiled to himself and fished his phone out of his pocket, ready to flash the light 5 times as soon as he would reach the 45th floor. However, when he climbed the stairs leading to the 45th floor, he landed on a floor that had a metal plate reading 44th floor. He was confused at first, but thought that he might have misread the previous plate, and this must be indeed the 44th floor. So he climbed another floor to see a similar metal plate reading 44th floor. This scared him, so he decided to climb 1 more floor, but this floor too was the 44th floor. He got a floor below to land on the 44th floor itself. This freaked him out, and he decided to explore the floor he was on for any signs that this was a prank. But all he could see were dark rooms and big windows showing the city from different angles. He was so frustrated that he decided to go back home. With all his leftover energy, he he started descending as fast as he could. But no matter how many floors he crossed, he still landed on the very same 44th floor.
No.
He soon realized what was happening and found the only way out was through a window. So George jumped from the 44th floor of the building below to his death. The headline on the next day's newspaper read, "One more suicide at the abandoned building, totaling the number of deaths to 44. Now I will post an ad on Craigslist again to find my next victim."
Oh, you crazy.
Let me tell you the story of how I developed social anxiety disorder. I used to work night shifts, so I sleep during the daytime, and a few years ago I woke up to some pretty terrible news. I had a bunch of missed calls and unread text messages from my landlord. They were telling me to call them as soon as possible. I called my landlord and he tells me that there's a leak in the apartment downstairs, one that they figured was coming from my apartment. As a result, they'd shut off the water to my apartment while I was asleep. That meant no shower, no coffee. I couldn't even flush my own toilet. The only consolation was that I'd found a plumber to find and fix the leak, and he'd reimburse me the money if I kept a receipt or invoice. Now it's already around 3 in the afternoon when I learned the news about the water being shut off, which was obviously coming up to the end of most people's working days. I knew of a few emergency plumbers who might be able to deal with the problem at short notice, but all of them seemed to be too busy to take the job. I ended up calling around to a few friends to see if I could stay at their place until the problem was dealt with, and luckily, one of my girlfriends was more than willing to take me in. But she also threw me a kind of Hail Mary suggestion as to where I could find someone who wasn't a pro, but knew enough about plumbing to be able to come over and help. Craigslist. I didn't think it'd be much help. I mean, I figured most people would just use it to sell stuff and organize seedy hookups or whatever. But then again, I hadn't actually visited the site all that much, and to my surprise, there was a section of the services part of the site that was called Household. Then, what do you know? The third post down said something like, 37-year-old handyman looking for work, with the post saying how he knew a little about everything and would take jobs at short notice at really low prices. It seemed way too good to be true, and
No.
I suppose that's because it was. I give the guy a call on the number he'd included in his post and explain the situation to him. Honestly, I expected that he'd give me the "sorry, too busy" line that all the others had. You'd think they'd at least arrange a time to take the job. But no, he seemed only too happy to drive out to me that evening to see if he could shut off the leaky pipe, then go turn my water back on.
See? Too soon.
I was literally like, all my prayers had been answered. I mean, the guy even said it himself that it sounded like a relatively simple job, and he was amazed another plumber hadn't come out already to just open up the floorboards, close off the pipe, then turn the water back on. I knew absolutely nothing about it, so when he said opening up the floorboards or whatever, and how that was a simple process, I just totally ate it up.
Like, stop.
About an hour or
Please
so
don't
after I'd made the first phone call, the guy shows up to my apartment and tells me he's outside. I realized that I'd totally forgotten to tell him which apartment I was in, so I let him know and I buzz him in. The guy then shows up at my door looking totally legit, and I show him into the bathroom, which was where the landlord thought the leak was coming from. I then went back to my TV room and carried on preparing my very late breakfast. Remember, I worked night shifts at the time. A few minutes later, the guy, who called himself Tony, calls me into the bathroom and says something like, "Does this look right to you?" I then walk towards the bathroom, stick my head around the door to take a peek, and that's the last thing I remember.
Oh.
The next thing I know, there's a bright light in front of me, and I groggily realize that it's coming from the little pen flashlight of an EMT checking if I'm responsive or not. I start panicking, asking what's going on, and they tell me to keep still while they get a stretcher up to my apartment. They put me on it, wheel me out into the hallway outside, and there's the friend who had agreed to let me stay at her place. She's in tears, asking the EMT if I'm going to be okay, and I remember just relaxing and sinking into the stretcher when I heard them say yes. I just felt like I wanted to sleep for days, but when I told the EMTs that I was feeling tired and could I just nap while they were driving me to the hospital, They kept telling me to stay awake, to do anything I could to stay awake. In the end, they kept asking me these dumb, small talk style questions to just keep me talking. Then at the hospital, I'm pretty sure they gave me something to keep me from drifting off because apparently falling asleep with a head injury can actually be fatal. And not long after, the cops showed up to take a statement about the plumber guy from me. They'd gone through my place and found a bunch of valuables missing. Obvious stuff too, like the TV being gone from the mount on the wall, all my jewelry gone, with my bedroom completely ransacked. Only then did I actually put two and two together and realize what had happened. That wasn't a plumber at all. He hadn't even touched anything in my bathroom. He just used the whole handyman thing as a front to rob people. One of the cops told me that I was the fourth person to get robbed by the same handyman guy that month, only because he uses different phone numbers and never told anyone much about himself. They hadn't been able to track him down. As far as I know, they never caught the guy. He just pulled a few robberies, then quit when the public got a warning about hiring anonymous handymen on the internet. Maybe he's still out there, robbing people, doing his thing, switching it up and not getting caught.
You better be glad it's not
And I
a
hope
kidney.
those other people he'd robbed and beat got over what happened to him. But I didn't. Like I said, I developed a serious anxiety disorder after the attack, and it hit me in a way I just didn't expect. Bad things happen to good people sometimes, I know that. And I took a lot of comfort in knowing that the cops were at least closing the net around the guy. But then after I got out of the hospital, it must have been like 2 or 3 days before I realized I hadn't even left the house. I got nervous getting food from the delivery guys that dropped it off at my apartment building, but I figured that feeling would just go away after a while. Only, it didn't. I got this tight feeling in my chest, this itchy feeling all over me, whenever anyone I didn't know walked outside my apartment or outside in the hallway. I still sometimes find myself running to the peephole with the gun I bought, staring through the little glass circle and just waiting to see the face of the guy who robbed me on the other side.
Don't you shoot nobody on
I
that.
know I'm never going to see it either, but I still find myself doing it. I got a nasty little scar on my jawline from where the guy hit me, and even the EMTs said I must have had a steel skeleton or something because it's a miracle my jaw wasn't broken. But I guess I got a lot of scars that people can't see, along with a wound that I'm not sure will ever properly heal.
He knocked your ass out. Oh.
In April 2010, a man named Jim Sanders uploaded a post to Craigslist advertising the sale of a small diamond ring. Jim lived in the small city of Edgewood in Washington state, along with his wife, Charlene, and their 2 sons, aged 14 and 10. Shortly after the advertisement was posted, Jim was contacted by a person claiming to be interested in purchasing the ring. Jim then invited them over to his home so they could view the ring in person before negotiating on a price. Then, on the evening of April 28th, a male and a female arrived at the Sanders home, the same people that had called ahead to arrange the meeting. Charlene Sanders recalls them being affable, even a cute couple, who thought that the ring would make the perfect Mother's Day gift. After agreeing on a price, Jim Sanders asked how the couple would like to pay him, and only then did it become evident that they had no intention of doing so. The male half of the couple pulled out a firearm, catching Jim completely off guard and leaving him no choice but to hand over the ring. As Jim did so, the female half of the couple rushed to the back door of the Sanders home, opening it to allow entry to 2 other criminal accomplices. The entire family was then corralled into the home's TV room, where the robbers made them kneel before binding their hands behind their backs.
I'm like, y'all ain't have to
After
do
the family
all
were
that.
secured, the robbers demanded that Jim and Charlene reveal the location of additional valuables. I had a gun to the back of my head with a countdown, 3, 2, and I'm just screaming and my kids are standing there, Charlene Sanders later said. I'm saying, please God, don't let them kill me. Don't let them kill my kids. Then they just ripped my home apart. The robbers knew that the longer they stayed in the Sanders house, the more they stood a chance of being apprehended by law enforcement. So, with this in mind, they positively ransacked the house in search of anything worth stealing. One of the robbers remained in the living room, acting as crowd control, but it seems he was far more forceful and intimidating than was required. His threats to execute both Jim and Charlene were so convincing that their two sons became inconsolable with fear. They began wailing at the top of their lungs, so loud that the robbers became concerned that the neighbors might hear their cries. The robber responsible for controlling the family began to threaten the two boys with beatings unless they remained quiet, but this only increased their agitation, and their sobs grew even louder than before. Their disobedience incensed the robber, who became increasingly agitated at the refusal to stop crying, and he made good on his promise to beat the children mercilessly. Their parents were forced to watch a living nightmare unfold before their eyes. Charlene Sanders reacted by offering up her own wedding ring to keep her children from being beaten. "That night was horrific," Charlene said. "When they ripped my wedding ring off my finger, we just kept saying, 'Just take what you want, just take what you want, don't kill us.'" Jim Sanders, on the other hand, had a very different reaction to the sight of his two sons being beaten. It seems Jim was initially rather pragmatic about the idea of his home being invaded and ransacked, as he knew that if he just kept his mouth shut and played for survival, the robbers would depart just as quickly as they arrived. Material possessions could be replaced, damage to their home could be repaired. Gunshot wounds, however, are not so easily mended.
They're not.
Yet when the robbers began beating his children, when they began hurting what was most precious in the world to him, he was overcome by a burning, all-consuming rage. It's incredibly hard to break free from a tightly secured zip tie, especially when they're binding a person's wrist behind their back. But somehow,
broke through it?
Jim Sanders was so utterly filled with fury that he managed to snap the thick plastic of the zip tie
Get
with
crazy,
nothing
Jim.
but pure brute force. In any other circumstances, Jim would have known better than to rush a man with a loaded pistol trained on him, but by that point, the red mist had well and truly descended. Jim found his feet, leaned forward, and charged his son's attacker, screaming as he ran. In the movies, the hero might dodge a few of his assailant's bullets before
he's gonna get
tackling him to the
shot.
ground. He'd then rip the pistol from their hands before turning it on them, using it to defend the family he'd worked so hard to raise. But life isn't a movie, and Jim
not.
Sanders wasn't anywhere fast enough to outmaneuver the robber. The gunman stepped back, aimed, and put 3 bullets into Jim's body before he even got within 6 feet of him. For Charlene Sanders, it was the single worst moment of her entire life. "I just kept saying, 'Honey, please stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with us. Don't go, don't go.' And he was just barely gasping for air," she said. "My husband was a hero. He told his boys he would always protect his family, and he died protecting his family. When they killed him the way they did, I couldn't believe it. But I was also in awe that the 3 of us were alive, and I was praising God for that." Charlene might be able to talk of the subjects with a degree of magnanimity today, but
That
at the
tugged at my heart
time,
a little bit,
she was
y'all.
beyond traumatized, and the men responsible for her husband's death weren't exactly faring any better. The murderer's accomplices were nothing short of horrified at what had occurred, and understood that, by that point, the situation was far beyond their control. A non-violent home invasion might soon become lost in a stack of incomplete cases, but a straight-up murder, the police would track them incessantly for such a crime. In the end, the robbers fled the bloody crime scene with cell phones, a laptop computer, jewelry, and an assortment of other valuables. And knowing the kind of heat which was about to come down on them, they drove south, all the way through Oregon until they reached California's northern border. A number of homicide detectives were assigned to the case, and it wasn't long before they discovered the robbers had made a single, fatal mistake. They had communicated with Jim Sanders using an email account tied to one of their real names. The suspects were then featured on the America's Most Wanted television show, and were named as Claiborne Bernard, Joshua Reese, Kiyoshi Higashi, and Amanda Knight. 4 heroin addicts who were foolish enough to take the front license plate off the car they used to escape Washington. Then, shortly after approaching the city of San Francisco, they were subjected to a traffic stop and quickly arrested. In court, the suspects wept as they were charged with 1 count of first-degree murder, 2 counts of robbery, 2 counts of assault, and 1 count of burglary. Each of them entered pleas of not guilty, and the raw horror and outrage they expressed left many believing it was a case of mistaken identity. But
No,
piece by
it's
piece,
done.
prosecutors tied the story together, proving beyond all doubt that the 3 men and 1 woman were responsible for Jim Sanders' murder. Finally, Charlene Sanders herself appeared in court, telling the judge and jury that there was no doubt in her mind that the 4 suspects were the people who invaded her home
And
and
killed
killed
her
her
damn
husband.
baby.
Charlene's testimony meant that in 2011, all 4 were convicted on all charges, which each of them received sentences of between 71 and 124 years in prison. When confined to prison, one of the suspects, Kiyoshi Higashi, told a reporter that he deeply regretted Jim's murder, and that he prayed for their family on a nightly basis because no one deserved that.
Nobody give a damn
But
about
when
their
reached
prayers.
out
They
for
ain't even
comment,
God.
Pierce County Prosecutor Mark Lindquist was quoted as saying, "Talk to Charlene Sanders about who it was that came into her house that night. It wasn't somebody sheepish. It was someone willing to hurt, and maybe even kill innocent children. Someone who had no problem taking their father's life before their very eyes."
None. That's so crazy. Mm, mm, mm. And that last story there, y'all, was little, a little heartbreaking. They over here just doing the most. I hope you guys enjoy those videos. What? What I say? Craigslist be getting crazy. Y'all be careful on that damn app. It's the website. It's been around for so long, but it's still cutting up. Y'all be crazy. Don't be crazy on there. Y'all be careful on there. I love you guys. Until next time. Bye.